Matt Festa has clearly infiltrated Stephen Vogt's circle of trust very deeply. Meanwhile, the Guardians' offense lets them down again in a series finale loss to the San Francisco Giants. Let's get into it.
Tanner Bagby of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into a Friday episode of Locked On Guardians. It's our favorite half hour of the day where we talk about your Cleveland Guardians for the next half hour, from the majors to the minors, the draft, and everything in between. Even when the Guardians are untrustworthy, you can always trust us to be here every day. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am Justin Lada. I have been writing Cleveland Guardians scouting reports and analysis on their farm system since 2007, and I'm here 5 days a week with my friend and co-host, Jeff Ellis, who is always in my circle of trust.
Don't really have a great comeback to that, or even a joke. I am Jeff Ellis, one of the
if you know the reference.
One of the original hosts here of Locked On when it comes to baseball. Before that, I was a long time analyst on prospects in the draft at Scouting 24/7, and apparently a big fan of Christmas when I look at the green and red combo here right now. But I want to thank all of our everydayers for joining us First, thank you to all of our everydayers for joining us, win, lose, or draw, as I like to say, as well as saying thank you for making today's episode your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. We got coaches to talk about. We got coaches that are leaving. We got combine data coming out, all of our pores. It's gonna be a fun day. So if you're upset about the draft and you want to know about some future stuff, we got you. If you want to commiserate on a loss that could have been a win, we got you. And if you want some breaking news, we got you.
We do. We'll get to all of that. Yeah, combine at the end. We'll talk about the offense disappearing and the plan for Kyle Manzardo. We'll talk about hitting coaches, and we'll talk about the bullpen circle of trust. Before we get there, you can trust FanDuel. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, if you're a new customer, trust that you are going to get $200 in bonus bets from FanDuel when you win your first $5 bet. Yeah, the bullpen circle of trust very clearly. Tito had Brian Shaw, and Stephen Vogt has Matt Festa. And we when they acquired Matt Festa, you and I were both very in on that. Especially you. You dove really deep on that. And we thought, okay, this is a guy who might be able to help them. And really, honestly, he has. I'm not blaming Matt Festa for today. Matt Festa has been a very solid find for this team. But I understand the guy pitched 17 pitches over the last 2 days. So I just don't think he's a guy you go to 3 days in a row. Like, Matt Festa's good, but he has his limitations. And Cade Smith wasn't available on Thursday, which also makes sense. He threw over 30 pitches the last 2 days. So I understand why he wasn't
Let's
available.
not mince words. It was dumb. It was dumb to go to Festa, especially if you're going to pull Enright and Junis out anyways next. It was dumb. I think that
Did you think you were going to go Festa, Gaddis, Clase? Was that the plan?
Then it's still dumb because
go to Gaddis anyway.
Yeah,
Gaddis was the best guy you had available at that time,
and especially when you get to the point where it is a high leverage situation. Like, I love Nick Enright. I'm glad he's up there, but once you enter that high leverage situation, and I know Gaddis has not been as strong of late, but he's still the guy you go to. It was a situation where I'm sitting there just angry. And I think that's a problem. Like, there was multiple questionable choices, starting with, and we'll talk about eventually the lineup decisions with this one.
Yes.
As well. And that's the problem. It's not these small little things or stuff where, like, like Tito, where we would joke about the fact that, like, okay, apparently your shortstop has to hit second. And he was like, his lineups were, he sat there with like a soldering iron or one of those things for I cannot think of, like, the you have the mask and you welding. He welded it in and wouldn't change it no matter what. But it's like, it's this silly stuff like Festa 3 days in a row. We all know metrically it's a bad choice, even if he has not thrown a lot of, and I guarantee the conference, I didn't bother to listen, would be like, well, he only threw 17 pitches and he's been really good these past. It doesn't matter. Like, teams familiarity.
He has his limitations too.
Yeah, he has been useful to this team. He has been valuable to this team, so much so that, like, when Seawald or whoever gets healthy, or if Alaman can find any consistency, like the next guy up probably means, in my opinion, Enright goes down. But right now, when I look at the team, it's like that's just a poor use of resources. That is a poor use of your bullpen. And yeah, you need more than one run. But let's be very honest. When you are facing, the other side of that is when you are facing Logan Webb, who I think is a top 10 pitcher in baseball.
Yeah.
It's like the best you can hope for is 2 runs. The best you can hope. They got 1. The best you can hope, but you have 1 late. And I know some people want Gavin Williams saying Gavin Williams got lucky the previous inning to get that double play. Like he was not sharp. He had hit his pitch limit. It was time to pull him. Going to Festa in that situation was 100% the wrong call. Like there is no other way around it. There's no other way.
Well, they were going to bring him in the 5th inning. If Williams didn't finish the 5th, Festa was warming for that spot, not just the 6th, which is why I'm like, I was like, all right, able to let Festa get the last out or 2 of the 5th. That's whatever. I didn't think they'd bring him out for the 6th. I thought, okay, maybe they just won't bring him out.
And then they had him face the minimum and then yanked him. Like it was that situation too, where it's like, okay, you faced your 3 and now you're gone. It's like, if you have that little faith, probably shouldn't have gotten to him in the first place. And then you're just stuck, right? You are stuck with him till that point. And then, Enright comes in and immediately was it Enright who gave up the hit that scored the 2 runs, or was that also off of Festa? It was off Enright, right?
I think Enright gave up the hits, the inherited
so
run scored.
Like, the other problem there is you got guys on 2nd and 3rd. Enright's not necessarily. I know the numbers this year; it's a small sample, but it's like he's not. You kind of need someone who can get some strikeouts, and unfortunately, at that point, they really didn't have anyone in the bullpen who's that guy. But there's a better chance of Gaddis getting that than someone else. So it's poor, really poor bullpen. It just makes no sense.
Gaddis was the best reliever you had available today besides Class A. They said Class A, ideally, they didn't want to go to him, but if they got into a situation where they had to, they would. Cade Smith, again, at 38 pitches the last 2 days, was absolutely out. And I understand that. I have no problem with that. I mean,
I think
all
they plan
things
to do
considered.
Gaddis in the 9th, Festa 6th, and I think the 7th would have been Junis. I think that was the plan.
To avoid Class. Well, I think if they had gotten the 9th with a 1-0 lead, you would have seen Class A. I do think you would have seen that. But I would have gone Gaddis first, only because the 6th inning was where things got dicey, right? Because the 6th inning is was it top of the order, I think, in the 6th inning?
I know it was the bottom of the order that got on base on there when they hit, wasn't it?
Okay,
so they pinch hit for because it was the bottom of the lineup. It was the bottom of the order.
Because they had the bunt.
Order. Yeah, Patrick Bailey was the bunt, and they.
So I understand anybody. I understand not going to Gaddis there. Like I would have. Yeah. But that he went to Festa for a 3rd day in a row instead of Junis or Heron or Enright tells you exactly where he is with this bullpen. Like Junis and I understand with Enright because he's still young and he's still inexperienced and getting his feet wet, so he's not really a guy who is quote unquote in the circle of trust. Junis was at the beginning of the year and he struggled, and he's not now. That's why he's coming in when you're losing. And you need guys that can come in and keep the lead or the deficit where it is. And not everybody can be a high leverage reliever in your bullpen. It'd be great if they all were. But Junis was at the beginning of the year, and he's clearly taken a step back in not only performance, but in who Vogt trusts. But you also can't trust a guy who has limitations like Festa, who can be helpful in good spots, but can't be a guy you push 3 days in a row, especially when the other team has seen him so much at this point where it's like the familiarity is going to make him vulnerable, not just the gas he's got left in the tank. And as far as Williams goes, he's at 104 pitches. You can drive your car down the freeway 90 miles an hour every day. And you say, well, I didn't get in an accident today. Well, that's great. But you want to know what? The next day you might, because you're taking that risk. And that was the risk with Williams. You get to 104 pitches, you get to the 3rd time through the lineup, and you see what happened in the 5th inning where he he struggled a little bit. He pitched a great game. No knock on Williams. He pitched a fantastic game. He gave them everything they needed in this game. But removing him was the right call because he was only giving up 2 hits doesn't mean he's going to continue. You have to know your pitchers and where they're at, read the body language, read the hitters' swings and all of the damage that's going on and the walks and things like that were starting to pile up. So it was a good call to pull Williams. It was not a good call to go to Festa. Ideally you would have gone, I don't know, Junis or Enright or Gaddis to Class A, whatever you did. But yeah, pitching any reliever 3 days in a row who just isn't tested like that or has limitations is just not a good option.
I would be curious. He's had such a limited. I would almost guarantee he's never done that in the big leagues before, and it never happens in the minors. No. So it's probably never happened either, because they don't have guys pitch 3 days in the minors. So,
which is not a situation you ever want to put your pitchers into. All right, we'll talk about the Guardians lineup, the lineup decisions. We're also curious, and we'll talk about hitting coaches leaving the Guardians coming up next.
But first, our wonderful friends at Wonderful Pistachios, and I have my bag. Oh no, did my bag get buried somewhere? Listen, if you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. This is where I normally pull out and showcase my wonderful jalapeno lime bag, because that is what I love. But looks like my daughter decided to turn this instead into an area where she was going to dump things. So, you know what? You got kids, you need energy. You do. 2 young kids, you need lots of energy. When you get hungry, you don't want to snack on sugar. What you want to snack on is Wonderful Pistachios, and get cracking on that, because that's going to give you protein, and that protein gives you energy, and it allows you to chase, for me, a 7 and 3-year-old around and keep that level of energy up. Doesn't mean I can always find everything, as you now see, but it gives me the energy to do that. And that's why you want to check out Wonderful Pistachios. It is a fantastic snack that will fill you up the right way. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
Jeff is now out of my circle of trust because he used my least favorite word, showcasing. So, Jeff, you have now been taken out of the circle of trust. And once you're out of my circle of trust, Jeff, you cannot get back in. So it was nice knowing you. Again, comment below if you get the reference.
I'm not Jeff. I'm now someone in a gray hat.
Okay.
White hat?
No longer Christmas. Okay. White hat. Are you? Yeah. Okay. You got any more hats you want to try on first? I don't have any other ones. Okay. You're wearing a hat for your hat. That's so nice.
It's a hat on a hat. So we've had a lot of people get
wearing any more hats?
Really pissed at us because they really want Kyle Manzardo to play every day. And for once, you and I kind of agree with them that today was a weird day to not. When Jose is DHing, for him not to be in there. Can we be honest? Jose has not been good as a DH, and he's kind of scuffled of late. Like, this was the day where you actually should say, hey, let's let Jose rest.
Honestly, I would have played Jose at third base anyway, because you want to know what? You had this past Monday off. You're going to have this coming Monday off.
That's fair.
If Jose is going to play, he wants to be at third base anyway. And if you're sitting there saying, well, we got to do what's best for Jose and DH him. No, what's best for you to rest Jose is either rest him or play him at third base. That's what's best for him. So him DHing, I don't read a whole lot into
after a night game into a day game if they didn't want to do. Oh, sorry about that. Stupid
and that's fine.
Then just have him don't play.
Just have him don't play. I agree. I agree. Don't have him don't play. Have Sheeman at third. Have Arias at short and Sheeman at second, or Sheeman at short and Martinez at second, like you did. I agree with that. But yeah, Manzardo had 2 hits the other night. You're facing a lefty or a right-hander on the mound. It's not like you had a lefty on the mound. You look like Joey from Friends, except you're wearing hats. That's all.
I do my stuff. I'm trying. It was a frustrating day, so let's bring some humor to it. I've got, I think, as many hats as they had base runners today right now. So
yeah, you are at 7.
Yeah. So it's yeah. I mean, Jose did have a hit, which is, but he's like 1 for his last 8 or so. Like he is no longer on a heater. I mean, he's a great player. He'll be fine. He's gonna be great. With all the third basemen going to the national. I was thinking about that today, that the Giants have gotten the only 2 guys that competed with Jose for the American League third baseman title. So now he is just all alone with Devers and Chapman out there. But it's like he'll be, but give the dude some days off. Like, tell him, hey, today you're a pinch hitter available late, and see what can happen, because he came up multiple times with guys on and didn't really help the cause. Now, he wasn't as bad as Schneemann. They put Schneemann in the 2-hole because he had the great day the day before. And much like Gabby Arias, who had a great day in game 1, and the next day was the poo-poo platter, so was Schneemann today, with just striking out and over swinging. So that was that was ugly. Because that's, to me, that's the bigger story of this game is Martinez had 2 doubles. Quan had 3 hits. Somehow they only got 1 run out of it, and Quan didn't drive in any of them because the one was the infield hit. Like they had what should have set up to get them at least 2 runs, with those 2 guys combining for 5 hits and 2 extra base hits. Problem was that since they combined for 5 hits, they only had 2 other hits the rest of the game. That's where, I mean, who knows? You put Manzardo in 2 after he had a good game. He's been struggling of late. Let's see if he can put more out of it. Like, you're right. Either have, if you want Schneemann in, he can easily play. Well, it's like, there's ways to make this work, right? Like, I don't know what the answer is. I think
I'm
it's
okay
just honestly
if you want to
let Jose have a day off.
Just play him at third. Again, you were off Monday, and you're going to be off this coming Monday, and you're not.
I gotta
you
say
have
though,
you have a night game tomorrow. I understand that. I just understand a day game after a night game, but you got a day game for a night game on Friday, and you've had the last 2 Mondays off. Like, I
then you
think
bench
Jose's going to
Schneemann
be
after a
fine.
good game, or then you bench Martinez, who actually was one of their better hitters today. So maybe it doesn't benefit him as much as we think it would.
Well, here's the other quirk to this too, is that tonight in Sacramento, JP Sears is going, so Manzardo won't play there, and the Athletics have 2 lefties. They have Springs in this one, and then they have JP Sears this weekend. So
yeah.
Manzardo is going to sit 2 of the 3 days. I understand you can use him as a pinch hitter, but he's not going to start 2 or 3 days this weekend. So you're going to get to a point where Manzardo didn't start Thursday. He's not going to start Friday. He's not going to start another day this weekend. He's going to sit 3 of the next 4 games because of that and only be a pinch hitter. And I'm okay. David Fry hasn't been great since he came back. But if he's going to be on the roster, he has to play because you got to find a way to make him useful because of how important he was a year ago. So if you are going to have him on the roster, you have to get him in there against lefties because that's where he's going to give you your best bang for your buck. And you got to try to make him useful that way. So I'm fine with platooning Fry and Manzardo from that aspect of things. Or if Fry's not doing fine, I want to see Manzardo against lefties because I want to see what he can do. But you also have to live with the negative results that come with that. But you have to stick to it. Like, you got to decide whether or not you're trying to develop him or not. And you can't have him sitting next 3 or 4 days. And historically, I don't know what the numbers are this year, but historically, Manzardo has struggled against changeups. And I understand Logan Webb has a very good changeup and also a very good sinker. So possibly there's a matchup issue there. But I don't care. Like, he's got to get used to it. You got to sink or swim. Like, Manzaro's 25 years old. You traded for him to be the future first baseman. You traded Josh Naylor to get something for him, but also because you had Manzardo. Like, you got to play the guy. And if he's struggling and you want to send him down to work on stuff and call up CJ Kafis, we can get into that talk again and talk about what we do and don't like about CJ Kafis. But that's another thing you can do as well.
And
but
it's all weird. Like,
pick a lane. They don't have a lane on Kyle Manzardo. Is that what it feels like? They haven't picked a lane in what they want to do.
It's even the weirdness. Like, this is a 2-1 game. Like, Duvall he's been good.
He wasn't even used as a pinch hitter, Jeff.
Yeah, that's my point.
As a pinch hitter.
That's what should have happened. Like, that's what should have happened in this situation. Listen, Duvall has his FIP is almost twice his ERA. He is susceptible to the walk. He's been very good this year, but he's not. The numbers don't quite add up. So why is Lane Thomas hitting when we know he's like, why is Lane
Thomas matchup for Lane Thomas? Yeah,
like, it's like Lane Thomas should be out. Manzardo should have pinch hit there. Jones at least had some energy on it. And then Bo Naylor has completely fallen off a cliff again. Like, there's another place where he could have pinch hit. There was 2 opportunities to pinch hit in a one-run game.
Inning, he was in the hole on the 9th if they would have gotten a runner on, which they didn't. So you never had a chance to use him.
I'm sorry, I had it wrong. But either way, it's like Lane Thomas shouldn't have hit. I was sitting there listening to the game furious. I can't remember the exact. I just remember Nolan Jones wasn't the final out of the game, was he? I thought Naylor did get up.
It was
Naylor, right? Yeah,
it was Naylor was the final out of the game. He popped
so you had
out,
2 guys you could have easily hit for, and they didn't do for. And it's a 1-run game. I know you get annoyed if people talking about punting a game in the comments, but to a degree, it felt like that in the 9th to me because it's like, why aren't you pinch hitting? Why are you letting Lane Thomas? We were hoping would kind of get back to normal. That hasn't happened. Bo Naylor, we thought maybe that hot streak, maybe you turn a corner. That hasn't happened, and you let both those guys hit.
I mean,
in a 1-run game.
To be fair, Lane Thomas did have a line drive to left field that Heliel Ramos made a great play on that would have given the Guardians 2 runs. I got to go look at the expected batting average on it, but it was a smoke job. And
he's still 0-4 with 2 Ks. I mean, that was one good moment, but he's a bad matchup against Duvall.
Right, but that's 2 runs, and if you score those 2 runs, guess what? You win. You're at least tied.
Yeah, I know, I agree, but it's like, I'm just saying in the 9th inning there, I don't understand why they weren't more aggressive. Like, why they let Lane Thomas hit, why you let Bo Naylor hit. That's just a 1-run game.
So he didn't hit it that hard. It was a 77 off the bat, but it had an expected batting average of 940. So
yeah, no, sometimes you get unlucky.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
we got to talk hitting coaches, and we got to talk combine.
Yeah, and Combine. We'll have to push that to segment 3. Combine had some really interesting data. We're going to dive into that. And hitting coaches are in demand.
From Cleveland, at least.
Yeah.
We'll get to that next here on Locked On Guardians. The NBA Finals, they have been in demand too, because they have been wild every night in the finals. Throughout the NBA playoffs, we've had highlight-worthy performances, momentum shifts. Can't miss moments unless you're a Cavs fan. Game-winning shots, breakout players. It has made it a great time to get in on the action at FanDuel, of course. I was looking over at the odds for Friday in Sacramento. They don't want to be called the Sacramento A's, but they're the Sacramento A's. Guardians have a 1.5 run favorite over the Athletics, Sears and Tanner Bybee, but the over-under in this game is 10 because the ball flies in Sacramento. Bybee is a fly ball pitcher, so I do have concerns about that. But JP Sears is a lefty, and the Guardians are having a hard time against lefties, so I have a hard time believing 10 runs are getting scored in this game. So check that out if that's something that interests you over at FanDuel. If you are new to FanDuel, it is the perfect time for you to sign up because at FanDuel.com, if you place your first $5 bet and it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, and of course, the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, thank you for tuning in all weekend today, of course. If you like what you're hearing, make sure you are auto-downloading on audio so you never miss an episode. That includes things like the MLB Squad Show, of course, in addition to your 5 episodes a week of Locked On Guardians. And you can also hit the bell on YouTube so you never miss a reaction video to breaking news or reactions to games, and as well as every episode out here as well. Speaking of breaking news, let's start here, Jeff, with hitting coaches. So we saw on Twitter this evening that Guardians Major League assistant hitting coach, and I'll tell you why that title matters in a second, Major League assistant hitting coach Jason Esposito, who's been in the system for about 8 years now, is leaving, I think, pretty immediately for Vanderbilt to be their hitting coach. So
that's where he played
the Guardians, yeah, the Guardians do like coaches from Vanderbilt. Let's be honest, they liked a lot of guys over the years there. So Esposito, that leaves what is it? Dan Puente, Grant Fink, and who did I say the other one was on that staff? There was somebody else. Well, Eckelman's in the front office. Okay. There was Josh Tubbs, who's the hitting. Tubbs
Rodriguez?
Is like the recent. Josh Tubbs is the other guy.
Josh Tubbs.
Tubbs is the other hitting guy in this group. So that makes it. You said this. Last 6 months, 2 Guardians hitting coaches have been lured away for bigger titles. So
people like the bash on them.
Right, and this is where we get into process over results, right? Because the hitting coaches are not drafting the talent; they are taking the talent drafted and they're working with them. So other teams clearly like what they're doing in terms of developing. You just might not have the right ingredients. I don't know. That's what we have to think about. Esposito, though, has moved up the ranks. He started as a minor league hitting instructor. I saw him at Lake County. He's been all over at this point. A lot of hitters really liked him, working with him. And the reason he had that major league assistant hitting coach when the Guardians have 2 assistant hitting coaches is because they keep inflating titles. Like, this is why guys get promoted. This is why you have 2 assistant pitching coaches. This is why you get these weird titles that don't mean anything, because you're trying to keep guys from getting hired somewhere else. So Esposito, they were trying to keep him. That's why they kept putting that title on him. Instead of just being an assistant hitting coach, he's a major league assistant hitting coach, even though nothing changes. So clearly he's been
coaches as well.
Yeah, and clearly that means, like Brad Goldberg, he was in demand. So you had to either promote him or lose him, which they were promoting him. So yeah, Esposito gone. I don't know if they'll replace him or not. Like there's Alex Eckelman in the front office, who's like a hitting resource guy, and then we talked about Junior Patansis, who's the minor league guy. They may or not replace him, but clearly their hitting coaches are in demand.
Yeah,
they promoted Grant Fink for the same reason, because he would have gotten hired away too.
Yeah, it's just funny because everyone always wants to fire the hitting coach or blame the hitting coach, and that is the number one kind of straw man argument. And I get it, because it's a frustrating team. Like offensively, they won this series, but it doesn't mean it was any less of a frustrating weekend. I mean, I feel like since that 11-run game, they haven't scored 11 runs in total, and I may be right in that statement. I may be wrong, but
Close.
It's I get why people are frustrated, but like you can only give the right ingredients. They can't turn table scraps into filet mignon. And a lot of people like to say, like, we never are negative. It's like, I don't know how much more I could have said how I disagreed with the drafting and approach strategy of the high contact hitter and the ignoring everything other than
today.
it's, which frankly, like, people aren't going to want to hear this, but if they had stayed with like contact at the cost of everything else, that probably would have led, if they had kept that approach, to Cags a year ago, because he was the contact king, and that it was the high contact rate in spite of the high chase rate.
Yeah.
And I just don't like that approach. But that's also, we'll see if Nabzik or Hawk and some of these guys can become major league players. I don't know. They're guys that they really need to get moved up and challenge, but they just spent years accumulating the Ernie Clements of the world, and everyone who is a distant relative of him in terms of hitter profile. And yeah, occasionally get a Stephen Kwan from that, but for the most part, that was not a successful approach to drafting and hitters and going for that and eschewing everything for contact. And they can't get a power hitter out of a contact guy who's spent the last 20 years trying to make contact with anything remotely near the zone, because what happens? That profile doesn't typically lead to power, because you're not trying to generate power. You're just trying to bail yourself out. Yeah. And it's not an approach that's going to lead to a lot of success. And I think we've seen a few derivations from it. That's probably the reason I'm very curious to look at this year's class to see if they do a bigger derivation. And that's not deviation, not derivation, deviation from that approach, because I don't think it's been successful. And I think it was something they tried because, there's some data behind it. And there was a time where like that looked like it could be something, but it didn't work.
Yeah, Jose, Lindor, Kwan, they got a couple of unicorns out of it, but that's what it turned out to be, unicorns. You can't, I think you could take contact guys and make them adjust the power, but the problem is a lot of those guys often are chasers, like Jack, and to an extent, CJ Kafis has this issue too. He is chasing a little bit, and he makes a lot of chase contact, but it's not great. You don't want that. That is Oscar Gonzalez syndrome. That's Tyler Freeman syndrome. If you can find guys who make high contact and don't chase, that's great. But that profile, because you make so much contact, like Josh Naylor, sometimes it works, and sometimes you get other guys that, like Oscar Gonzalez, that just don't work out. All right, Jeff, let's quickly talk about the combine before we get out of here this week. You got some names you want to go through. I will just say off the top of my head, from this week's combine, just the guys you had me look up. Dominic Reid. Super exciting. I'm really in on Dominic Reid. Yes, I like Dominic Reid, and I would take him in the second round. Yeah, I'm in there. You can talk more about Dominic Reid, but I'm all in on Dominic Reid.
Dominic Reid is a mid-90s fastball, and then both his change and his curve, I believe, I could be wrong on that, what two pitches. They have massive amounts of vertical break, and they have a good amount of separation between the pitches. I just think it's going to be a nasty combination. He's an Abilene Christian pitcher. Everything's green because he pitched at a small school. But when you add in like the results, which you don't really want to, especially college status scout line, especially when it's a lower level, but like he was, let's see, his, if I pull it up right here, he had the best average break on his breaking ball. And then he was he had like the second or third best on his off-speed pitch. Like he's just, everything moves with Dominic Reid. And in that same one, I have to talk about Matt Barr from Niagara Community College, where I think he was number 2 in number 2 in fastball spin, and then his off-speed I think was the number 1. Like just spin on everything. So those two guys pitcher-wise stood out. And quick, just minor local shout out, Ohio kids, Landon, I'm gonna get his name wrong. Viduric hit the ball really hard. Not great numbers this year for Cincinnati, but a really good athlete. Could be some Joey Weimer there if you want to give a comp to another guy who had a similar profile.
I love me a Joey Weimer.
And then Blaine Wink has some of the worst stats this year. I got to be very honest with that. But he did pop up on the data. Ohio State kid who really struggled this year. He averaged fastball induced vertical break, 5th best numbers. Actually tied for 3rd when I look at the list. So Blaine Wink could be a buy low. It's not like Ohio State's a developmental factory. I mean, I can't think of, so like Lewis and Scott. Remember when
Scott
Wimmers?
Lewis, yeah.
Remember when Wimmers went in the first round of the Twins?
Wimmers. Ooh,
yeah, but and then was like a huge bust and like immediately fell apart. Like Ohio State's pitching development, not exactly. It's a different group. New coach from Campbell is doing some different things, doing some good stuff there. But like might be some room for some growth with Blaine Wink. Again, you're looking for traits and tools, not performance.
Yes. Correct, and that is the case in the minors. When you get to prospects, there are results that need to happen, but there are things under the hood you have to look for. There are traits and there are peripherals you want to look at, not just always results based. This applies to guys like Kafis and just Kafis. I won't say DeLauder. DeLauder's underlying issue is just health. But we didn't mention real quickly Reed Worley. Man, I love the spin on Reed Worley as well. Very excited for him. I saw somewhere written that the highest spin breaking pitches this year were Ryan Presley, Dustin May, Seth Lugo, Phil Maton, and Lucas Sims. I know not the most successful guys in the majors, but they've all had success throughout their careers at different points, and that's a fun range to be in. And I really like Worley quite a bit. He stood out at the combine this week, and I don't know where he goes, to be honest, but I think he's an exciting package. He'd be someone I would keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, especially in a draft like this where there's not a lot at the top. There's a chance to, get a few guys with interesting traits later. Cleveland's got the four picks on day one, so it's definitely worth checking out and knowing a little bit more because they're going to be a lot of guys to follow and look at. Oh, there goes that. Thank you for joining us. Remember,
the only knock on Worley
is
he's going to be he's almost going to be 19 on draft day, so there is that.
Yeah. Next week we'll have our reaction
Monday
to the Oakland series. Thank you all for joining us, and go Guardians, go.